Hello and welcome to Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Now I'm afraid that's all the time I have for pleasantries today, as you catch this video at a most dire moment. A siege of an ancient citadel held by demons for 100 years and finally within reach of human crusaders who see it as a vital foothold in their battle against the forces of darkness. But I am getting ahead of myself. This castle exploration is from the end of the second chapter of Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, a new game from the makers of Pathfinder Kingmaker, which was a love letter to classic RPGs that impressed genre veterans back in 2018. Owlcat Games started work on this new adventure in summer last year, and I recently got to play an early build with studio founder Oleg Shpilchevsky and talk through his plans for the game. Now, I should point out that a lot of what I'm going to tell you isn't reflected in this alpha build footage. Hell, the footage doesn't even have the interface. In the version I played, it was just placeholder from the first game, though Oleg says we can expect a UI with a darker look to fit the game's generally darker tone. The biggest visual leap is the ability to rotate the camera and drink in those tiny dioramas, a feature that isn't shown in this footage, which is handy. This camera freedom allows more sophisticated topography. I mean, certainly our siege session takes us all round the houses as we sniff out secrets hidden in corners of the courtyards and climb up to the rooftops, spinning the view to see all the fiery chaos play out. Point is, I need you to use your imagination as I talk you through the biggest changes that Owlcat have made to Pathfinder Kingmaker for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous.
Strike with all your might. We cannot be defeated.
Oleg tells me about Owlcat's three big aims for Wrath of the Righteous. They want the game to be more epic, they want mechanical innovations, and they want to explore a more moral grey zone where good and bad behaviour aren't so clearly defined. Choosing the existing Wrath of the Righteous Pathfinder campaign certainly ticks the epic box. It's the story of the war between demons and paladins as you lead the 5th Crusade against the hellish legions of Descari spilling from the demonic wastelands known as the World Wound. Now, you know that's a bad thing just from the name. But it's not as simple as good versus evil. Owlcat's desire for shade mean they avoid the cliches of shining knights and snarling imps. You'll have to deal with corrupted paladins and some sympathetic demons. This castle siege is a good example. It sees you trying to take back the city of Dresden, having spent the previous 15 to 20 hours of the game gathering allies. Before you invade, there's a scene not dissimilar to Dragon Age Inquisition's War Room, where characters debate the approaches to the fortress, from sneaking in to charging the front gates. One companion is from the Hell Knight Order, a group who put the law before anything and who even hope for devils just to test their steely resolve. They'd even kill their own friends if they were hindering their lawful quest. Choosing between competent demon slaying or more merciful humanity hints at the kind of territory we'll be exploring in the game. You might be wondering, if we are leading the 5th Crusade, does that mean we won't have a kingdom to manage? The management layer was one of the more unique elements in Kingmaker after all, and it is getting overhauled here to reflect your new role, and to trim out some of the more stressful time management. At the start of our demo, Oleg admits that people hated the time pressures in Kingmaker. The constant push to build your lands meant you couldn't relax and absorb the adventure. Oleg says he isn't personally a fan of structuring games around time pressure, so they will use other mechanics to motivate your progress. In Wrath of the Righteous, you'll be managing your army instead of a kingdom. You'll hire troops and fight with demon armies on a strategic layer separate to the classic party-based adventure that's being shown in this alpha build footage. I ask how involved the strategy will be. Are we talking about Total War style RTS battles embedded in the game? Oleg says he can't compare it directly to another game as it's unique, but hints that the way you move armies around territory may bring to mind Civilization, and he also cites the legendary Warlord series in the way that armies can be sent to plunder ruins on the map to unearth powerful artifacts to help turn the tide of war. That last reference will be music to ears of a certain age. Warlords was a lovely little turn-based strategy game that feels a bit lost to the mists of time. If Pathfinder can tap into that magic, this could be really cool. Now I just wish we had some footage of it to show you. Oh well.
Did we step on their toes as well?
Speaking of awesome things we can't show, let's talk about Mythic paths. This is a new layer of character development brought in from the tabletop game that sees your character take on extraordinary powers by committing to a mythic path. This isn't something to pick at the outset, but about 10 hours into the game. In that time you'll see a representation of mythic paths, an introduction to more advanced powers, before ascending and adding juicy new abilities to your hotbar. Oleg gives us several examples. There's the Trickster, who much like Loki of Norse mythology can bend the rules in their favour. Oleg says this path almost sees the rules behind the game itself, and can use that to tweak dice rolls that govern outcomes. If you roll a natural 1, which is a total fail, the Trickster can turn it into a natural 20, a perfect hit. Another path, the Iron Path, brings you into the same mindset as the Hell Knights I mentioned before, putting the law before anything or anyone, like a medieval Judge Dredd. At later stages in this path, you'll be able to feel another character's guilt, spotting a special aura around them and using that to force a confession. And if all that sounds a bit grim, you can always take an Angelic Path, developing powers that boost the morale of the party. Speaking of the party, while companions won't have their own mythic paths, they do gain new powers derived from your choice of path. Not all the mythic paths will be recognisable to people who've played the tabletop game. Owlcat, say Paizo, who own Pathfinder, are very open to ideas, including the addition of darker paths, playing as evil characters who are still working to fight the demons. Oleg gives the example of the Lich mythic path, the ultimate undead wizard who is capable of raising armies of the undead or transforming all nearby living creatures into undead friends. While this sounds awesome in itself, and will have to remain a sound as, again, I don't have footage, it also gives us an idea of how the game will explore that murky ground between light and dark. Oleg says the quest is built around the idea of the price of power, and that they want to test where players will draw the line throughout the journey. The Lich is a great way to test your boundaries, as it will have the power to turn entire cities undead. After all, they don't eat and they don't sleep. A perfect source of warriors for your army, if you can live with the guilt.
We cannot be defeated.
To some people, the idea of even more character development will bring them out in a cold sweat. Pathfinder Kingmaker is an amazingly full-bodied take on the tabletop rules, with one of the most in-depth character creators the genre has seen. Oleg jokes about it being character generation porn, with people taking 2 or 3 hours to pick over every option. While certainly a strength for genre veterans, it could be overwhelming for newcomers, so I'm pleased to hear that Owlcat are working on a better introduction to the world for those that need it. They'll invest in a tutorial that explains what the game expects from you and suggests a way to start out. Oleg says they're thinking about a system that maybe hides the more difficult parts of the Pathfinder rule set from beginners, shortening hundreds of options to just dozens and then gradually open them back up as they progress. Of course, he's keen to remind us that Kingmaker was made for hardcore genre fans, people who grew up with Baldur's Gate, and they don't want to just simplify the game for people who want the story. It's more about teaching them, which feels like a very noble aim. I hope it works, as there's heaps of great stuff people missed out by bouncing off Kingmaker's early hours. Speaking of Kingmaker, Oleg is also quick to address the lack of polish in the game's original release. He says it was a sad moment to see players hit problems, especially as they pushed deeper into the game. He admits that they were caught out by the size of the task of testing all the multiple routes heroes could take through the game, that with this many branching routes, not all of them were good enough. A big focus in Wrath of the Righteous is making the hundreds of choices and consequences in the decision tree lead to more polished places. Obviously something we won't be able to test until we've dived into the whole game, but it is good to know they've taken that criticism on board. Mechanically, what we play is very similar to Kingmaker. We stay alive in the Dresden Siege by keeping heavy armoured characters in the front of formation, archers and mages at the back. We save a potential companion from castle dungeons and have other companions chime in with their thoughts and opinions. Again, balancing the desires of the group is important to keep certain characters on side. There's the constant stop-start of real-time with pause combat. Now, I know several people who played Kingmaker with a turn-based mod mod that greatly smoothed out the chaos of combat. Given the success of such tweaks, I do wonder if Owlcat might formally add this option to combat, but only time will tell. For the time being, my little warriors are quite happy chopping through the forces of darkness, and I can't wait to join them when the game finally releases. So that's a quick trip through Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous and the big changes it's making to Kingmaker. That game was a great throwback to the golden age of the classic RPG, and this looks to repeat many of the same tricks, but with fewer frustrations and a lot more fun character options. If you have any questions about the things raised in this video, do pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them, and if you'd like to hear more about Wrath of the Righteous, do let me know. Of course, I'd love it if you gave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun for even more videos on PC games. With Baldur's Gate 3 on the way, this year is shaping into a good one for CRPG fans, and we will be sure to cram as many of those games as we can into the channel. So thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you again soon. Bye for now.